Yes, sir. My name's Harold Starling. I Director of the National Fire Services Office for fire departments all over the United States. Trying to help them improve their services and realize better ISO rates. And by doing that, then it improves your insurance rate, what they call a risk rating, kind of like golf. The more points we earn, the better your score. You'll see it though from an ISO perspective. If you're a class 3, then you're a commercial fire department. If you're a 4th or a 6th, you're a residential department. And if you're worse than a 6, then you're considered basically like a high risk. And so our job is to try to help, like your chiefs and other chiefs around the country, to understand these rules and to be able to prepare for these tests and have proper planning. So they're getting what they need, not necessarily many times what they want, but what they need. And that usually makes the commission feel very good.
All right, you're fixing to tell us how we're going to accomplish the ideal situation for Effingham County.
Yes, sir. Basically what we did is we came back in and we did a study to look at your entire process. And we came in and looked at your fire department and kind of broke it apart and put it back together again of what it would look like if you were trying to go for the same, maintaining your ISO or better. The problem that had happened back 2 years ago, roughly now, ISO had changed their test criteria. And when they changed the test criteria, there's 19.5 points they earned last time that evaporated. And so, you know, the fire department was kind of behind the power curve from the beginning due to the fact that this change had put more stress on the department. And so my goal was to go in and try to figure out from the equipment that we had and the capability that we had, what would give us the best bang for the buck. And so we wrote, like we usually do, we wrote an assessment. Now you'll see today that I'm in Scranton County. I'm your neighbor chief right now. We travel all over the United States providing not just these services, but actually we go in when they've had a problem sometimes with the chiefs. We actually fill that in for 3, 4, 5 months, whatever. And so by doing all these type things, it's kind of really helped us come up with good templates on how to run a very smooth and cohesive department. When we came in and we talked with Clint originally, your chief that you have now, we were very happy with the fact that he was extremely knowledgeable in fire and they had a very good attitude, very willing to change and bend and flex, and that's the way it needs to be in fire services. Unfortunately, fire services is not something that's very rigid. We have to be prepared for when these ISO rules change that we're willing to change with them. And we do that because it's a tremendous cost-benefit ratio to your citizens. And so our goal is to try to link what we need with what changing he can do and then what you can afford as far as through equipment, personnel, these type issues, and yet trying to keep it as most cost effective as possible. So anyway, so we came in, we did this procedural background, and we looked at the methodologies on how the department runs and how it operates and how many people that you have, and looked at the historical backgrounds. I'm up on page 4. So then we come up with a thing on the findings. And the findings, we looked at it and we found that you needed to have 2 engine companies that attend all fires, and you need to have the automatic aid coming from the outside districts. And then we went into the manpower side. And we ran into some issues on the manpower side where we didn't really have enough manpower at times, especially during the day. And so we came up with some recommendations on kind of guiding you through if you were going to come up with a standard template that would improve services and could help your ISO rating and should be affordable to a community. So if you go to page 6, you'll notice there's a template, and we go off a thing called NFPA 1710. And at the top of it, 1710 tells how many people should basically be on a fire scene. And they base everything on a fire scene because a fire scene is what absorbs the most amount of people, and it takes the most amount of our time when we have to deal with these events. But it's also an event that puts us in most risk and danger. So that's why it was very important that NFPA has been trying to come up with a template where you'd have X number of firefighters at these events so you'd have a safer environment. Well, when we broke it apart here, we found that we were actually short on career staff. And so we made a recommendation that you would bring it up to, our recommendation was to go to 9, where you'd have 9 career staff on a day, 2 two-man engine crews to the south, 2 two-man engine crews to the north, and then a battalion chief that rovers around. The reason you do that, and it was important for me to kind of fill in some of these gaps, With ISO, if you have a structure fire, let's say it happens at 8:30 in the morning when people are changing shifts in their jobs, and it could be some of the most difficult time to get volunteers. And volunteerism is getting harder and harder across America to get more and more. It just is. We don't know if it's just, people are just too busy or the expense behind it as far as fuel and these issues, and the training requirements have gotten much harder with the state, but the end result is it is getting harder to get good volunteers that can meet that criteria with the state to be that registered volunteer. And so we saw that there was times during the day when you could end up in a situation where you wouldn't have as many people as you need. Now ISO says you have to have 4 people at all structure fires from your fire department, or that area will go class 10. And that's happened in many places. Worth County today, since their entire county is countywide class 10. And it's because they had times when they could not provide enough people at the stations that needed to deliver the trucks. And so the end result is if you can't do it, unfortunately, ISO, even though being a very honorable company and wanting to see you do well, will call it as it is. And they saw that there were times when there were not 4. So what we did is we came up with a template of trying to allow you to be able to ensure that you would have 4 at any given fire at any given time from the career side. So no matter what happened on your volunteer side, you would still be covered. And so that's why we came up, that's where the 9 came from. That gave you 9 on per day. Like I say, you'd have 2 engine crews to the south and 2 engine crews to the north. When you look at your the amount of population that you have, I mean, that's just very realistic numbers. And they're still low, but they're numbers that are livable. To give you an idea though, now many times I'll take cities and counties and I put them together, or sometimes I take them apart. You'll see as we talk a little later, we talked about Springfield, how it would be a good idea if y'all came together. But where I'm at right now over in Sylvania, wherever we're in this, I've just put the city and the county together. But even with the city and the county together and us covering the entire area, and we're kind of a spoke in the middle with Sylvania where our city county station is going to be, we're doing the same thing. We're going to have 9 people on duty a day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, plus our volunteers. And so, and our population is 1/3 of yours. So you can see you really are getting a lot of bang for the buck, but you have more volunteers than we do, and they're filling in some of these gaps. So the 9 that you're looking for, I mean, that it's a very realistic number. From ISO, I'm very worried that if we don't hold that number, then it could affect you in a very negative way. The insurance ratings, you're the rate keeper. You decide what ISO rate your community will hold. All communities is different. I mean, I can remember when back in 2000, I worked here at the time, Camden County approached me and they wanted to go countywide class 4. And they wanted every fire station they had to be a class 4, no matter how many miles out, up to 5 miles, but no matter where they lived, whether they had fire hydrants or not. They've enjoyed their rating now for 15 years, having one of the best ratings in the state of Georgia, countywide class 4, no matter where you went, same because of a water shuttle, they went class 4. So I mean, it shows that for communities that want to go after these numbers, they can be whatever you decide, whatever you choose. Your rating today that we're trying to maintain is at least a minimum of what they call a 4/4X. That's what the new rating is. And you do a thing called alternate water. You're doing a thing now using turbo drafts, and these turbo drafts use ponds, and they take a pond and it makes it just like you have this huge water tower over the top of these homes. And so these all figure in with your insurance rate. So these all things figure in to help out as far as reducing the cost on the insurance. And so when we came up with all these projects, we were looking at like a lot of the equipment, and I kind of speed through some of this for you because there's so much of it that have already been completed. We picked out all the equipment that they were missing, and we picked out the manpower as far as that they needed to add, and Toss and Clint have been extremely proactive on fixing anything that was deficit. I mean, pretty much now, either everything's in place or ordered, isn't it? So like y'all are light years ahead right off the bat. Usually where we go in, like my next place, I literally constantly, it's replaying a movie all over again, different actors, same movie. My next place I leave to, in 2 weeks I'll be in Tift County, and we'll be building them a brand new countywide fire department, and I'll be their countywide chief. And, but we're starting from scratch. We're literally starting having to build and design everything. It's so neat when you come into a community like this that had tremendous assets as it was, the heavy duty assets as far as the trucks and all, you had most of what you needed. And so then you're able to fill in with the smaller items, you know what I mean, the loose equipment, the turbo drafts, these type things. And I mean, just see, you'll see some tremendous effect out of it. And that's what's so cool about it. This whole plan, though, what it was about mainly is to try to bring you up to speed where you can maximize on the items that are affordable. And there are some things that, like in 911, they're going to ask some questions, and they're going to want you to be able to text off your 911 and be able to, the 911 center to receive the text and to be able to dispatch from the text. But there's some things that technologically it would cost so much to do, it just makes no sense. But all the things that we found in here were stuff that, like when we went over it with Clint, he realized and he agreed that, you know, not only would this improve the ISO rating, but it would also improve services. I'll be honest with you, the improvement that I've seen in the last 2 years is exactly what this community needed. There's a lot of us in fire service that have been worried about this community for a long time. And I mean, unfortunately, we have to run under certain standards and guidelines. And if people design their own standards and they just start coming up with their own rules and ideas, that can take a community into a negative tailspin quickly. And what's neat is that all the stuff that we're seeing happening now is in such a positive mode. And so I think your community is going to see some huge effect out of this. And after we went through this, we looked at the testing, we looked at your communication, we looked at, you know, your apparatus as far as breathing and your training and all these things. But literally, you kept having the capability to do. We were having to tweak on it some, but Clint had been headed in that right direction on this stuff. So that's what was kind of neat on this. We did have to go in and do some engineering on the water, that type of stuff, and that'll help you with your ISO because that has a huge effect. You can't count the alternate water without it. And basically, I think the biggest question that they probably have now, and I have, it would be, would y'all consider improving your manpower status? Because you are very, very low on career manpower. I mean, you're running basically right now, Clint, we're at 18, is that where we're at? And we need 9 more? Shift, that's what we're talking about. So see what happens is if you have 27 people, you really only have 9 people on per day because you've got shift A, shift B, shift C, because they're on 24-hour shifts. So sometimes when you look at these numbers, they look like there's a lot of people, but they're really not because they're on this ABC shift. And so unfortunately, it just takes X number of people to be able to earn the credit, earn the score, and provide a very positive, healthy service.
Excuse me just one second. The question that he just asked, I just want to be clear about something when he said about would we consider manpower and 9 more. Isn't that what we've been contemplating and what we have penciled in the budget already with the, and also with the idea from Springfield that 3 would come from Springfield?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to be sure.
So we need to stick more.
Yeah, but that is budgeted, it's in the contemplated budget.
6.
9.
Yeah, the next thing I want to talk to was about Springfield. We went over Springfield. We decided we wanted to look at their entire project and try to figure out where they would fit in all this. Because we're constantly looking for people, just like we did with Rincon, where we're trying to help them get their best ISO rating. And we've been doing that with Rincon, and Rincon's done a long hose lay and different things. And they've done extremely well. We ran into some issues again. Remember, we have to do that minimum of 4 from you, and saw some problems with the Springfield side where they could end up in jeopardy of that class 10 at certain times. And yet they seemed to be a healthy department trying to do well, wanted to do well, but it looked like it only made sense if you merged the 2 together, you'd have a much better department. The larger department, usually when you merge, always takes over. That's why in Screven County, they've wanted it for years, but it's taken them 15 years, but we've just now got the approval from the commission and the council to merge Sylvania and Screven. And there'll be one unity, same type project you're doing. Now the only difference there is the city will be the provider of services because they were already larger. They had twice the amount of career people as we did. So they were much more developed department than the county. So it only makes sense. But here it's a reversal. Here you were the one that was the more mature fire department. And even though Springfield's been there forever, and I fought fire with them back in the early 80s. I mean, as far as I was the, Ed Guyton as a station chief, and I can tell you their whole history. And they've always been a good department, but they're running into the same issues with a lot of people, and that is that it's hard to get volunteers. And so when you match their people and your people together, and their equipment and your people together, and you look at logistics of where they sit and how easy it'd be for y'all to, work with them, and provide the services for the city, it only made sense. And we do that all over the United States. We merge departments like that. I mean, it just works. I mean, you take a department that's barely making it, and then you put them together, and then you have two healthy departments instead of one that's healthy and one that's on a fringe. I always try to explain to people that you can have the nicest fire trucks parked in front of a station as you want, and you can have the most beautiful building, but without people, you have nothing. People are what put fires out. That's what takes extrication calls. That's what goes out to first responder medical calls, not trucks. And so their issue is that they needed the support of your manpower. And I don't know how far along y'all have gotten on that, whether the city, county, but if you could make that happen, that would be extremely positive for all parties. And that's what we're constantly looking at, is what's best for all parties concerned. And I've done this 22 years, and we've done it, and we've grown to be the largest ISO consulting firm in the United States. And how we've done it is because we're constantly trying to find what's best for all parties. And but that's one that I definitely believe would be good for both of y'all, the city and the county.
Skip, you mentioned a couple of times about volunteers and increasing problem with getting volunteers.
Yes, sir.
We have to have a certain amount of personnel to get this ISO rating.
Yes, sir.
Would your observation be the same as what someone else has told me, that as you get more paid personnel, volunteers go down because they're sitting there saying, why should I be doing this for nothing when someone else is getting paid?
I've been asked that a lot, and I said, and this is my standard pitch back. If that was true, then there would be no real Army, because the reservists would put them out of business, or either the Army would put the reservists out of business.
Which
because
leads to another question along that same line. Reservists get paid something.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, though, that needs to be occurred. It needs to happen anywhere. Any volunteer. The word volunteer does not fit what our fire services is today. Right. A volunteer is somebody. When I used to do the EOC here, and somebody said, we had a hurricane and I'd like to staff a radio, or I'd like to staff a telephone. Do you have something I can do? And I could take untrained people and put them in a position and give them really quick, this is how you do it, and then they take off and run with it. But today's fire services require state certifications and state qualifications, and so it's not simple anymore like it used to be. And so what most places are doing, and what we do in other places, is that they will supplement them for training, X number of dollars, and they'll supplement them for calls when they go to structure fires, and then that makes it to where the wife feels much better when it's time to go eat, and they use some of that supplemental money to do it. She especially feels good, and they'll push them out of bed when it comes to the retirement, because we make sure that these people are qualified under the retirement program. It's a wonderful program. You can get the same retirement as a volunteer, just like you served as a career staff. So somebody can now come in as a volunteer, and they'll go and make $1,000 a month, the rest of their life, starting at 55, once they put in 25 years. And I mean, that's an amazing program, all for $25 a month.
Is anywhere in here some perspective of how you would do that? What would be the recommendation of how to go about that?
We talk a little bit about it, but we don't get into that too deep, because every community is touchy on that they like to come up with their plan, their model. I'll tell you what I recommend at any place. I recommend that you pay $20 for every time they do training, and they get an opportunity to train 2 times a month. If they want to train 4 times a month, then that's fine, but you require at least 2. You get 2, they get the $20 a piece. On structure fires, if they come to structure fires, then you give them $25 or $20, whichever you want to do. Again, when you balance out these numbers, you find that it is very inexpensive compared to having to hire people, but that's not an instant fix. A lot of it here, the problem that you dealt with here, because I can remember, honestly, people will tell you in Guyton, we had 100 members. We were one of the largest fire departments here. I mean, but it's because everybody there was appreciated, and everybody knew we needed them, and everybody knew that it was an extended family. But I'll be honest with you, I've kept up with y'all for years, and that is, and I think Clint would agree, that's left here over the past 10 years. Is that true? I mean, isn't it harder, is it less of an extended family as it used to be?
It had created that way. We're building it that way.
I mean, I see huge difference when I talk to people in the street about it. I do. And they tell me it's totally different. I mean, it's like, it's very positive, you know what I mean? In other words, they feel like he'll make sure that when they have a fire, he'll go by and tell them, thank you. Little things like that mean the world. I mean, you know, but there does get to a point where it's an economic cost to the family. That's the problem. Now, we've been able to enjoy the good fuel prices. It hasn't been quite as bad, but when fuel was $4 a gallon and people are driving these big trucks going to these calls, that's very difficult because they drive to the call from their home. And that could be, you know, 8, 10, 12 miles. And so there is an economic loss that and so I always try to explain to people that if you're trying to come up with some way to do a recruit benefit program, the whole goal should be that it shouldn't cost them money to be a volunteer. I mean, if they shouldn't have to make money at it, but it shouldn't cost them money to be a volunteer. And that's usually when the volunteer gets off. Now, your volunteer numbers have already come up though, because it used to be, what, 40? Yeah, so we're already up 20 now. The only problem though on the volunteer side is you do end up issues to where at certain times of the year or certain times of the clock of the day, there's going to be less here. I mean, because they have to work. I mean, that's the whole deal. I mean, you basically during the daytime, the only ones that you really can rely on are either ones that work local or either they're on some type of shift program where they happen to be off. And then a lot of those are, you know, would be coming out of the sleep kind of deal. So that's why we try to fill in on that daytime, trying to come up with at least a minimal amount of manpower that's a career staff, and then backfill the rest of the way with your volunteers. I do think that your volunteerism will get much higher. I mean, if you go to Thomas County, he runs about 120 to 130 all the time. I mean, and there are places just like that do, but it took him years to cultivate that. He has an attitude a lot like, you know, Clint's, and I mean, so that will cultivate. It just takes time.
I'm curious, do they use some type of a stipend program?
Yes, they do. Most all the ones I know that are successful come up with a program where they try to figure out what they can afford. You know, unfortunately, you have to come up with boundaries. Like on the training, I mean, if you offered it that they could get money every month, well, it would get to a point where you're not getting enough bang for the buck. But from my ISO standpoint, if I get him coming twice a month, he's done great things. He'll count for the ISO. He also then turns around and he counts for his retirement. And that's the other thing that's important. So we're doing things that are healthy for him and he's doing things that are healthy for us. But if all of a sudden you're paying 4 times a month, well, then you pay 2 times more than you needed. So you're gonna have to come up with some boundaries that work. And so what we usually do is we'll get with our chief and the administrator and let them work out a program that they feel comfortable with. And then we come in and kind of preview it and see if we can have any insight that might help out. But they're pretty sharp. I mean, I don't think that'd be an issue.
Well, speaking for myself, I don't believe in reinventing the wheel.
You're right. Yeah.
I would love to have input from wherever you can
Yeah.
get it.
I'll be glad to get you some other counties, some information on that if you'd like, just so you can have some reading sources on it, on how the other counties do it. Because that would be easy to get that together for you.
Well, I certainly don't have a problem, and like Bear was saying, it's already in our proposed budget that we're working on for next year to put these extra people, but we want to, and we've already turned it around, but we want to build on that.
Well, your inspection was actually supposed to have already occurred. Ralph Roberts is the guy that's your ISO inspector, and I've been talking with him regularly. Matter of fact, we're doing Jacksonville, Florida on Monday. That's one of the largest cities in the world. We're about to do their inspection on Monday. And so we do large places and we do, you know, smaller areas. But the end result is he was hoping to come about 2 months ago, and we got him to put it off. And we're waiting until after you get the opportunity to do these hires, so you don't lose those points. You're also adding 2 stations. One of the things we found is you had some areas of class 10 that were hitting some people pretty hard. And so you fixed one of those when you relit up Griffins Lake. Your past administration and fire didn't quite understand, and I tried to warn them many times, don't take that station offline. If you do, it would do terrible things, and it did. It had a very negative effect to a lot of people. But luckily now, you've got it heading in the right direction. You got that station lit back up. The new station that you're building down in Tuscaloosa, I mean, it'll have a huge effect for people. I mean, there's so many things that you're doing now that are positive. I mean, usually when I come in, it's terrible. It's when I do one of these things, it's like I'm the bearer of bad news. But like Clinton, I was telling him, I said, this is so different because, I mean, I really don't have any bad news like that. I mean, I can capitalize and tell you how we did things and why we did things, but you're already headed in the right direction. We just trying to get you to, you know, if you just follow through on some of those things, I think you'll see some great things come out of it.
Well, budget-wise, needing to add in 9 people was the bearer of bad news, but, you know, what my hope would be is that if we do what we need to do at this point, like Chairman is saying, that
Mhm.
then as Clint has started building up the volunteerism,
Mhm.
as things progress, then we can start really filling in more and more with the volunteerism, and that this should be the last large hire gap
Mhm.
fix that we have to do like this, so.
This, actually, where you're at in manpower was actually planned many, many years ago. Back in 2000 and 2001, when we were here, there was a lot of plans where they were going to hire. But then after I left, they changed gears, the management that was here, and decided that they were going to spend all their money in capital improvements of equipment. And then so all the money that had been budgeted, put aside, and all these different things where we had some of these equipment where we'd gotten some older used equipment intentionally to try to leave money set aside so we could have manpower, because we had manpower issues then, just like you do today. And then it ended up going to capital. So that's what's put y'all behind. That's what's making it so hard on y'all, because y'all are having to play catch up now. And I always feel like, that's horrible for any community, because you're having to play catch up for stuff that really should have done 6 years ago. But basically, I mean, if I read it page by page and item to item, there's really nothing else I can tell you except that I have that you're headed in the right direction. You're doing extremely well. The only thing that I saw that really needed to be dealt with was your manpower, because I just hadn't seen that come online. The stations I'd already seen that they were either building or in the process. I mean, there's just so many positive things that are happening in that direction. I mean, when you look at the equipment now, you now have equipment that's so standardized. I mean, Clint will tell you, when I came here, I mean, I was shocked because some of the equipment was so drastically different, because the old administration just had their own ideas on how things should be. Well, the problem with that is anytime, like you were talking about respinning the wheel, anytime you come up with these ideas, that may be great for the person spinning the wheel thinking they did something great, but it takes it off of it being the norm. And in fire services, we want things to be in the norm. So when your truck pulls up next to a Rinkin truck, everything's in the same place. And it is today. I mean, constantly, the items that we found, the things that we saw, Clint's got right in there, taking care of it, no problem. And I mean, you should be very proud. I mean, your fire services work very hard, and Tulsa stayed right on top of this, I'll be honest with you. I mean, even though I'm not here to give them an attaboy, but it's true. I mean, I'm glad to see that you got an administrator that is really trying hard on this stuff. We've had a lot of meetings on this.
I think we feel the same way from up here, we can tell.
Yeah. It's a very, very unique experience for me, because it had gotten, I'll be honest with you, when I left, I'll be honest with you, I mean, it was a very different time. And I just love seeing that, just the camaraderie when y'all come in. I mean, it's going back. There was a time when it used to be like that, and then it just changed. And it's just neat to see some of these things work in such a positive way.
Well, I'm not going to ask you to get into the politics of it. I'm just going to ask you from your standpoint.
Yes, sir.
We've already talked about merging Springfield and the county together and the benefits that can have.
Yeah, it'll actually benefit both of you. I mean, because you'll gain their manpower, they'll gain your manpower. The standard operation procedures will be much smoother. Not having the boundary lines is a huge deal. Screven County and Sylvania did not understand how big a deal it would be when you take that boundary line away. I'll never forget the day that I'm standing, having a meeting on the outside, talking with a contractor, and across the street an accident occurs. But the problem is we're not getting called because there's a boundary line that says it's Sylvania's. And if you go over and you take that call, then all of a sudden it's all these politics and all this stuff that gets started because it's this boundary line. He jumped that call. And what's so neat is when those boundary lines go away. That is so wonderful. And especially when as close as it is here, because for Springfield, they're surrounded by the county and Rinkin and Guyton and all that. So as you move away some of those lines, it makes it really neat. I mean, you'll see services will go a whole lot smoother.
Would you see any benefit to either the municipalities or the county or any other?
Well, Rinkin is so developed that at this point in their life, they have a pretty strong fire department. There's no question about it. I mean, they've gone into the career mode. They have volunteers. They've always had volunteers. On Guyton, I think is experiencing what most people are, just like Springfield. No, they don't have the people they did at one time. And you know, it's positive for any community if they're willing to embrace that. That's going to always be the problem. You know what I mean? Can someone embrace it? Can they come up with this idea that I can contract the service out, say with the county, and I'll still have my local fire department? But what they would find is, yes, they would still have their local fire department. The person having the fire doesn't care whether it says Effingham County on it or if it says Springfield or Guyton or who. They don't. They just care that somebody's there. And but I think, you know, I always try to explain with every community, you know, you can only approach them and then see what happens. In Springfield, it was unique because I saw that there was a possibility that, you know, there may be a window to do that. It just made sense to do that. So we started talking with them right off the bat and saw that there was a possibility that it was going to be able to work out. And they'll find it'll be just like what's going on with, you know, Sylvania and Screven, that it's a very positive, healthy thing.
My hope was that if we were able to work it out with Springfield and it went well, then probably the second easiest step would be Guyton if they would consider it. And then as things went well, you know, that may help in the long run towards all, but.
In Screven County, I've been working with them. Rick Jordan used to be my assistant county manager here and then was my county manager for a while. And so, you know, so we worked with them a long, long time. And all the cities in Screven County now will be under this Sylvania Screven contract except Newington. So what I try to explain to people is that, you know, what we see may be healthy, though, has to be embraced by that other group. And even though we've approached Newington and told them we'd be glad to help them out in any way we can, they have to want to do that. That's going to be the problem. And but I think most communities they get forced to it eventually because of the volunteerism issues. I just do. I mean, it gets to a point where it's harder and harder to get volunteers. It is, and you're able to use a much larger pool because, I mean, if you look at the demographics of how large the county is, you have more people to pull off of when they have that, you know, a small area there basically. And so, but most of these, you know, I mean, any city and county interagreement like that could turn out to be an extremely great thing for them if they're willing to try it. But it's got to be something that all parties are willing. And I know, because I came from the county background here, I know you're more than welcome to help any of the cities. You know what I mean? But again, whether they would reciprocate that is hard to say. I haven't heard anything negative.
Well, bottom line is, all the citizens are citizens of the county,
Mhm.
whether located inside of municipal limits or not. So it's what's good for everybody.
Yes, sir. You're right.
Well, I would like to say I appreciate the work that you've been doing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah,
I do.
I know you complimented our staff, and I will do that as well, because this has come a long way.
I can't see anything but better and better for y'all. And that's nice. I mean, unfortunately, I do this so much that many times I can see a community where they're heading into really rough seas, and then at times I can see where they're heading out of the seas, that toughness. And I think yours is going to be going a whole lot better in the future than it's been for years and years. And it's wonderful for the community. And actually, that's all a reflection on y'all, because the end result is you're at the helm. I mean, I always try to explain the commission is the captain. We just, staff works at your will. And so you give them some latitude to do some neat things. And I know they appreciate that. It's always wonderful when the commission's back in the fire department or any departmental, you know, agency.
Well, we have relied on their input and judgment, and do very much appreciate that how you were able to help us as a consultant. I thought that was a wise thing for us to do. And talking about not recreating the wheel, you've got the years and years of experience. You're able to tell us what's being done, what's working, and what's not working, so that just makes sense.
The good and the bad.
Yeah.
All right.
Clint, you got anything
Any
you
other
want to
questions?
say?
I'm good.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate the opportunity.
Appreciate it.
a few times and over the years and try to get rid of it now. Somebody got in there.
Mr. Chairman, if y'all have just 1 minute, I will say I do appreciate everything that's gets done. It's been very helpful getting through this process, and certainly I would agree with what he said. Clint's been very great to work with, and we've got there. Again, y'all seen this in bits and pieces, but all of the stations that were in there, just, very briefly recap, Tusculum is under construction. It started about 2 weeks ago, should be done in the next 90 days. We'll have a conversation with y'all in a little while about a piece of property to build another one on. And there are 2 more pieces that we need to acquire, 3 stations to be built still. Y'all approved all that in your short-term work program. There's funding for it in SPLOST. The 2 engines that need to be purchased have already been done. Clint went up to Pennsylvania and found us 2 of them. We had them shipped down here. All the loose equipment is purchased. The personnel is accounted for in the proposed budget that y'all have yet to adopt. It'll come to you on the 5th of next month. And what he was referring to with the volunteers and helping them out, we certainly agree with also. And there's money in there, I believe, $50,000 to go towards those stipends in the proposed budget. So all of the pieces are sort of in place for this to happen. And we are getting dangerously close, a lot closer than we have been in the past. And I think it's a great thing. So I think it'll certainly help citizens monetarily on ISO, and I believe it helps staff with their staffing, to have a safer thing. So, and again, we appreciate y'all giving us the direction to get this done.
We all have made it look easy, like it was very well work involved whatsoever.
Just let Clint do all the work. It was easy for me.
All right, anybody else? We'll adjourn this workshop. Back in here. We need to start promptly at 5.